There is a moment in every soul's journey when silence becomes unbearable, not because there is nothing, but because the everything begins to whisper, and you hear it, not with your ears, but with the part of you that remembers being more than flesh, the part of you that once danced before stars had names, and now it stirs again. You were not born just to live, eat, sleep, and die. You were planted, buried, veiled. You came here with fire in your veins and a vow in your bones, but the world fed you sleep, fed you noise, fed you fear, and so you forgot. You forgot the language of your own light. You forgot how to breathe beyond lungs, how to feel beyond emotion, how to know without proof. And now something in you aches, not because something is wrong, but because something ancient is waking up. The H is the signal, the holy symptom, the echo of a self that still remembers the stars, and that self is tired of waiting, tired of pretending, tired of wearing the clothes of the false life. That self is scratching at the inside of your skin, trying to get out, but you resist, don't you? You cling to the image, the name, the habits, the world you built with hands trained by fear. You keep painting over the cracks. You call it healing, but it's hiding. You call it balance, but it's bargaining. You want rebirth, but not the death. You want awakening, but not the silence. You want freedom, but only if it doesn't cost you your mask. But the soul doesn't bargain. It burns. It burns through illusion, through comfort, through every carefully crafted lie you told yourself to stay small. And when it burns, it does not apologize. It does not ask permission. It simply begins to dismantle the people, the goals, the desires, the addictions, the distractions. One by one, they fall away, not because life is cruel, but because truth is calling you home. You think you're losing yourself. You're not. You're losing the version of you that was never real. You're shedding the skin that held your spirit hostage. You're grieving the life that delayed becoming. This isn't chaos. This is alignment. And yes, it hurts. It's supposed to. Because resurrection only comes after the tomb. Because awakening isn't gentle. It is violent. Divine violence. Holy disruption. It shakes the bones. It shatters the mirrors. It tears the veil between the seen and the sacred. And you asked for this. Before time began, you said yes. Yes to remembering. Yes to remembering. Yes to becoming fire again. But you forgot. And so now, the soul must remind you, not with words, but with collapse, with solitude, with dreams you can't explain and pain you can't locate, with a thirst nothing seems to quench. You will try to fill it with people, with work, with success, with anything that promises relief. But it won't work, not anymore, because the thirst is not for this world. It is for what you left behind. It is for the real, the eternal, the hidden name you once knew and spoke without sound. And in the quiet, it begins to return. The memories, not of your past life, not of your past life, before the trauma, before the story, before the world. You remember how to see in the dark. You remember that darkness is not evil. It is the womb. It is the temple. It is where the soul goes to speak with God when language fails. And so you descend. Finally, not to escape, but to find, to recover, to reclaim. And in that descent, you find pieces of yourself like sacred bones. You gather them, slowly, carefully, not to rebuild the old self, but to awaken the true one, the one who never left, the one who waited in silence, the one who whispered through every heartbreak. This is not the end. This is the beginning, and it is. But you must keep walking, even when the path disappears, even when your name means nothing, even when you are naked before the silence and all your prayers feel like echoes, because what waits for you on the other side is not a goal. It is not enlightenment. It is not perfection. It is you, the real you, the fire-born, the void walker, the one who remembers the covenant made before breath, the promise to carry the light in the dark and not forget. And now, at the threshold of the real world, the one behind this world, you must choose. Not with words, not with willpower, but with surrender. Will you let it all burn? Will you let the storm come? Will you let yourself fall so deeply into the truth that there is no version of you left untouched? Because this is the price. This is the gate. This is the gate. This is the death before rebirth. This is where the old gods fall silent and the true voice begins to rise. And so you enter, not as a warrior, not as a victim, but as a witness. You step beyond thought, beyond belief. You leave behind your name like a coat too heavy for the heat of truth. You descend. There is no light here, yet you are not afraid, because the fire is in you now. Not the fire, anger, or ambition, but the original flame, the first light. It does not burn, it reveals. And in that revelation, you see everything, not with eyes, but with essence. You see the web, the infinite lattice of being. Every soul, every sorrow, every joy, interwoven, alive, sacred. You see your own pain stretched across lifetimes like a thread made of gold, not as punishment, but as purpose. Every wound an opening, every loss a redirection, every silence a prayer in disguise. And you begin to weep, not for what was lost, but for what was always there and went unseen. You remember the garden, not Aden as written, but the garden within. The place you stood before the world began, when you were pure awareness wrapped in divine wonder. When you knew the stars not as distant fires, but as siblings. When you looked into the face of the eternal and laughed without fear. And now, in the ashes of your forgetting, you remember the covenant. You remember the descent. You remember choosing to fall. Not because you were cast out, but because you were called to carry the light into the dark. You were never a victim of the fall. You were the volunteer. You said, I will go. I will forget. I will bleed. I will wander through shadow and suffering, so that when I remember, my remembering will awaken others. And now it is happening. The remembrance becomes a wave. It crashes through you. It rewrites you. It unbinds you from every lie, every chain, every echo of who you thought you were. And in the silence that follows, there is only breath. One breath. Complete it. Complete it. You are not the same. You are not person anymore. You are a presence, a flame, a holy frequency wrapped in skin for just a little while longer. And now you rise, not above, but through the ashes, through the body, through the story. You walk back into the world not to escape it, but to sanctify it. You speak not to teach, but to remind. You love not to possess, but to resurrect. You become the doorway, the dark cap, and throughs will pass. Through you, the memory will awaken in the next one, and the next, and the next. Not because you demand it, but because your very being reminds them of what they are. Not what they do, not what they fear, but what they are. And this is the end of forgetting. This is the death of sleep. This is the birth of the real. Not tomorrow, not after more healing, more praying, more proving, but now. Here. You are home. You are whole. You are the one who never left. You are the flame that walked into the dark and returned bearing the name of God.